On a rainy morning in Swords, a suburb north of Dublin, Ireland, on October 7, 2024, Toby Adebayo walked through the gates of St. Brendan's Secondary School, his backpack heavy with books and dread. At 15, Toby was a lanky Nigerian Irish boy with dark skin, tight curls, and a quiet intensity that hid his nerves. His navy uniform blended with the crowd, but his presence stood out in a school where most faces were white. Swords, a town of 40,000, was a sprawl of housing estates, shopping centers, and old stone churches. For Toby's family, his mom, Funmi, a nurse, his dad, Soun, a taxi driver, and his little sister, Sad, 9, it was home since moving from Lagos a decade ago. But at St. Brendan's, Toby was learning that home could feel like a trap. Toby's first year had been okay. Good grades, a few mates, a spot on the football team. But this term, something shifted. A group of boys led by Connor Walsh, a 16-year-old with a sharp grin and a knack for trouble, had zeroed in on him. It started small, muttered jungle boy in the corridor, snickers when Toby spoke in class. By September, it was relentless. Connor mimicking Toby's accent, accidentally tripping him in the canteen, spreading rumors that Toby's family was on benefits. Toby, raised to rise above by Funmi, ignored it at first, but the weight was crushing. He wasn't just a target, he was the black kid, a label that followed him like a shadow. In the locker room before PE, Toby changed quickly, avoiding eye contact. Connor, leaning against a bench, tossed a football at Toby's head, laughing when it hit. "Oi, Toby, you dodging spears back home?" he said, his mates, Liam and Dara, cackling. Toby's jaw tightened, but he grabbed his kit and left, the sting of their laughter burning. He'd heard worse. Last week, Connor had posted a monkey emoji under Toby's Instagram photo, deleting it before Toby could screenshot. Reporting it felt pointless. Connor's dad was a Garda, and teachers like Mr. Doyle, the PE coach, called him a good lad with a rough edge. Toby knew the script. Speak up, get dismissed, look weak. At lunch, Toby sat alone in the canteen, his tray of chips untouched. His best mate Rory, a freckled Irish kid who loved anime, had started drifting, sitting with Connor's crew to avoid hassle. Toby didn't blame him. Connor's charm was a weapon, pulling in kids who didn't want to be next. Aisha, a Pakistani-Irish girl in his year, caught his eye from another table, her nod a quiet solidarity. She'd faced her own slurs. "Paki," whispered in the halls, but they never talked about it. Words made it real, and Toby wasn't ready for that. After school, Toby walked home to their semi-detached house on Bracken Road, the rain soaking his blazer. Funmi was in the kitchen, stirring a goosey stew, her nurse's scrub still on. "How's school, love?" she asked, her Nigerian accent warm. Toby shrugged, forcing a smile. Fine. He couldn't tell her about Connor, the emoji, the football. Funmi had enough. Night shifts, Sadi's asthma, Seun's long hours. Last year, when Toby mentioned a kid calling him charcoal, Funmi had marched to the school, only for the head teacher, Miss Brennan, to call it a misunderstanding. Toby learned then complaining made it worse. That evening, Seun noticed Toby's silence at dinner. "What's up, lad?" he asked, his voice gentle but firm. Toby poked at his rice. "Just school stuff." Sadi, coloring at the table, piped up. "Is it that mean boy again?" Toby's face burned, but he shook his head. "It's nothing, Sad." Funmi's eyes narrowed, but she didn't press. Later, in his room, Toby stared at his football boots, his passion for the game fading. Connor was on the team, turning drills into a gauntlet. Trips, shoves, pass it to the African, said with a sneer. Quitting felt like surrender, but staying hurt more. On October 8th, the bullying sharpened. In history class, Connor slipped a note onto Toby's desk. "Go back to Nigeria." The words, scrawled in blue pen, hit like a fist. Toby crumpled it, his heart racing, but Liam's smirk across the room said they were watching. He shoved the note in his pocket, avoiding Aisha's glance. She'd seen it, her eyes wide. At break, Connor cornered him by the lockers, his voice low. "You're not wanted here, Toby, get it?" Dara shoved Toby's shoulder and Liam laughed, filming on his phone. Toby pushed past, his fists clenched, but their laughter followed him down the corridor. At home, Toby hid the note in his drawer, its weight heavier than the others he'd thrown away. He wanted to tell Funmi, to fight back, but Connor's dad loomed, a Garda, untouchable. Reporting meant risking more, maybe worse than notes or shoves. He thought of his parents' stories of Lagos, of starting over in Ireland, of Funmi's pride when he got into St. Brendan's. They'd fought for this life. He couldn't let them down. On October 9th, it escalated. Toby found his locker vandalized, Jungle scratched into the metal, his books soaked in juice. Connor wasn't in sight, but his crew's snickers in the hall were proof enough. Aisha, passing by, whispered, "You okay?" Toby nodded, but his throat tightened. He cleaned the mess in silence, Mr. Doyle glancing over but saying nothing. At football practice, Connor missed a tackle, his knee slamming Toby's shin, leaving a bruise. "Oops," Connor said, grinning. Toby limped off, his coach's "toughen up" echoing in his ears. That night, Funmi noticed the bruise. "What happened, Toby?" she asked, her voice sharp. He mumbled about football, but her eyes saw through him. "You're not yourself," she said, her hand on his. "Tell me." Toby's chest ached, but he shook his head. "It's fine, Mom." He couldn't burden her, not when she came home exhausted, not when Soon worked 14-hour days. But as he lay in bed, the note's words, "Go back to Nigeria," burned. He wasn't going anywhere. This was his home, his school, his team. He'd fight, but quietly, the only way he knew how. On October 10th, 2024, Toby Adebayo walked the corridors of St. Brendan Secondary School in Swords, Ireland, his shoulders hunched under the weight of his backpack and Connor Walsh's latest taunt. The note from 2 days ago, "Go back to Nigeria," was still in Toby's drawer, joined by a new one slipped into his locker yesterday. "You don't belong." The words in Connor's jagged handwriting were a blade cutting deeper with each day. At 15, Toby, a Nigerian-Irish student with dark skin and a quiet defiance, was a target in a school where his difference was a spotlight. The bruise on his shin from Connor's tackle at football practice throbbed, a reminder of the price of staying silent. In English class, Toby sat at the back, avoiding Connor's smirk 2 rows ahead. Miss Kelly, a white teacher in her 30s, was discussing of mice and men, but Toby's eyes were on his desk where someone, likely Liam, Connor's sidekick, had carved Abo. He covered it with his book, his heart racing. Aisha, the Pakistani-Irish girl who'd seen the first note, glanced at him, her expression a mix of pity and caution. Toby nodded slightly, a silent pact. "Don't talk, don't make it worse." But when Miss Kelly called on him to read, Connor muttered, "Speak English, Jungle Boy," loud enough for Liam and Dara to snicker. Toby's voice faltered, but he read, his accent clear despite the heat in his face. Miss Kelly didn't react, her eyes on her notes. At lunch, Toby skipped the canteen, eating his sandwich by the science block, away from Connor's crew. His phone buzzed, a message from Rory, his former best mate. "Sorry, I've been weird. Connor's a prick. You okay?" Toby stared at it, torn. Rory's distance hurt, but the text was a lifeline. He typed, "I'm fine," then deleted it. Trust was a risk, and Toby wasn't sure he could afford it. Aisha passed by, her lunch tray in hand. "You don't have to hide," she said, her voice low. "They're cowards." Toby managed a half smile. "Easy to say," she shrugged, walking off, but her words stuck. Cowards or not, Connor's power was real, his dad's Garda badge a shadow over the school. After school, Toby walked home to Bracken Road, the Dublin rain a cold drizzle. His mum, Funmi, was at the hospital, her nursing shift stretching late. His dad, Soon, was out driving his taxi, and Sade was at a friend's. The house was quiet, but Toby checked the door twice, half expecting a note. In his room, he pulled out the crumpled messages, their weight heavier than the vandalized locker or the bruise. He wanted to burn them, to tell Funmi, but her tired eyes stopped him. Last year's misunderstanding with the head teacher had taught him, speaking up backfired. Connor knew it too. His taunts were careful, no witnesses, no proof. On October 11th, the bullying turned crueler. In the changing room before football, Toby found his kit soaked in water, his boots stuffed with mud. Connor, tying his laces, smirked. "Wet pitch, Toby. Gotta be ready." Liam and Dara laughed, their eyes daring Toby to react. He didn't, pulling on the damp clothes, his skin prickling with shame. On the field, Connor's passes were hard, aimed at Toby's chest, one catching his ribs. Coach Doyle, a burly white man, shouted, "Toughen up, Adebayo!" Toby gritted his teeth, but each hit chipped at his resolve. He loved football, but it was becoming a cage. At home, Funmi noticed his soaked kit. "Oh, what's this, Toby?" she asked, her voice sharp with concern. He mumbled, "Spilled water," avoiding her eyes. Funmi's hand paused on the laundry. "You're hiding something. I know you." Toby's throat tightened, but he shook his head. "Just a bad day, Mum." Soon, home early, caught the tension. "Talk to us, lad," he said, his taxi keys jingling. Toby wanted to spill it, the notes, the slurs, the mud, but Sade's voice from the living room, singing a pop song, stopped him. He couldn't let her see him weak. "It's nothing," he said, escaping to his room. That night, Toby lay awake, the note's words looping. You don't belong. He thought of Aisha's defiance, Rory's text, his parents' sacrifices. Lagos to Dublin, night shifts, long drives. Quitting football, changing schools, telling Funmi. It all felt like letting Connor win, but fighting back was a gamble. Connor's crew was untouchable, their pranks deniable, their power rooted in St. Brendan's silence. Toby's fingers traced the bruise on his shin. He needed a plan, something quiet, something his. On October 12th, Toby took a step. In the library, he found Aisha studying alone. How do you deal with it? He asked, his voice low. The names, the looks. Aisha's eyes softened. I don't, she said, but I keep proof. Photos, texts, just in case. She showed him a folder on her phone. Screenshots of slurs, a blurry pic of a note like his. Toby's pulse quickened. You ever show anyone? She shook her head. Not yet. Too risky. But it's power, Toby. They don't know you have it. Her words sparked something. Proof was a weapon, one Connor couldn't dodge. That day, Toby started saving evidence. He photographed the notes, the locker's jungle scratch, his muddy boots, keeping them in a hidden phone folder. In science class, when Connor whispered, Blackie, Toby recorded it, his phone tucked in his pocket. The audio was muffled, but clear enough. It felt like reclaiming a piece of himself, but fear lingered. Connor's dad, the Garda, could twist it, and teachers like Miss Kelly rarely listened. Still, Toby held on, his silence not surrender, but strategy. On October 13th, the bullying hit a new low. Toby's backpack left in the corridor was emptied, his books scattered, pages torn with abo scrawled in pen. Connor wasn't there, but Liam's laugh from the stairwell was proof. Aisha helped Toby gather them, her voice fierce. They're scared of you, Toby. You're smarter than them. He nodded, but the torn pages cut deeper than the notes. At home, Funmi found a ripped book in his bag. Toby, what's happening? She demanded, her eyes searching his. He froze, the truth on his tongue, but said, Accident, Mom. Her silence said she didn't believe him, and Toby knew the lie wouldn't hold much longer. That evening, Suyun sat Toby down. You're not eating, not talking. Is it school? His voice was steady, his driver's hands still. Toby's chest ached, but he shook his head. Just stress, Dad. Suyun's eyes narrowed. We didn't come from Lagos for you to hide, Toby. Whatever it is, we're stronger. The words were a lifeline, but Toby wasn't ready. He needed more proof, a way to stop Connor without breaking his family. As he lay in bed, the notes echo, You don't belong, fought Aisha's advice. It's power. Toby wasn't sure he had power, but he'd find it quietly, before the shadows in the corridor swallowed him. On October 14th, 2024, Toby Adebayo sat in the back of his maths class at St. Brendan's Secondary School in Swords, Ireland, his pencil tapping a nervous rhythm. The bruise on his shin had faded, but the weight of Connor Walsh's bullying, notes saying, Go back to Nigeria and you don't belong, a vandalized locker, torn books, pressed harder. At 15, Toby, a Nigerian-Irish student, was a shadow in his own school, his dark skin a target for Connor's crew, Liam, Dara, and their snickering orbit. His hidden phone folder, photos of notes, scratches, muddy boots, a muffled recording of Connor's Blackie slur, was growing, but using it felt like stepping into a minefield. Connor's dad, a Garda, cast a long shadow in St. Brendan's teachers like Mr. Doyle and Miss Kelly turned a blind eye. In the corridor after class, Toby dodged Connor's gaze, but Liam accidentally bumped his shoulder, muttering, Watch it, Abo. Dara's laugh followed, sharp as a blade. Toby's fists clenched, but he kept walking, Aisha's advice echoing, Keep proof, it's power. Aisha, the Pakistani-Irish girl who shared his burden, had become a quiet ally, her own folder of slurs a mirror to his. Yesterday, she'd slipped him a photo of Connor writing jungle on a bathroom stall, her hands shaking. Be careful, she'd whispered. Toby nodded, adding it to his stash, but careful wasn't enough. Connor's attacks were bolder, sensing Toby's silence as weakness. At lunch, Toby hid in the library, his sandwich uneaten. Rory, his drifted friend, texted again. Can we talk? I feel shite about Connor. Toby hesitated, then replied, Meet me after school, quiet. He needed an ally, but trust was a gamble. Aisha joined him, her eyes scanning the room. They're planning something, she said, her voice low. Mia heard Liam talking about teaching you a lesson. Toby's stomach twisted. Mia, Connor's on-off girlfriend, was part of their crew, her glares as sharp as Liam's. What kind? He asked. Aisha shrugged, but her fear was clear. Just watch your back. After school, Toby met Rory by the bike racks, the Dublin rain a soft curtain. Rory's freckles stood out against his pale, guilty face. "Connor's out of control," he said, kicking a pebble. "He hates that you're, not backing down. I should have stuck by you." Toby's chest loosened, but he stayed guarded. "Why now?" Rory sighed. "I saw him trash your books. It's not right. What can I do?" Toby paused, then said, "Just watch. Tell me what they're planning." Rory nodded, his eyes earnest. "I'm in." It was a spark, small but real in Toby's lonely fight. At home on Bracken Road, Funmi's suspicion was a growing storm. Toby's torn books, his quiet, the bruise. She wasn't blind. At dinner, she set down her spoon, her nurse's eyes piercing. "Toby, you're not eating. You're not you. Is it school?" Soon, home from his taxi shift, leaned in, his voice steady. "No more hiding, lad. We're your parents." Sadeh, coloring nearby, looked up, her crayons still. Toby's throat tightened, the notes in his drawer screaming to be shown, but he pictured Funmi storming St. Brendan's, Connor's dad twisting it, the bullying worsening. "It's just exams," he lied, his voice hollow. Funmi's silence was heavy, her hand squeezing his. "We're here, Toby, always." On October 15th, Connor's lesson struck. In the changing room before football, Toby's kit was gone, replaced with a ripped shirt scrawled with monkey in marker. Connor, lacing his boots, smirked. "Lost something, Toby?" Liam filmed, his phone subtle but clear. Toby's blood boiled, but he pulled on his PE shirt, ignoring the laughs. On the field, Connor's tackle was deliberate, his elbow catching Toby's jaw, sending him to the ground. Coach Doyle blew his whistle. "Walk it off, Adebayo!" Toby stood, his jaw throbbing, and caught Aisha watching from the sidelines, her phone out. She'd recorded it, her nod a signal. Evidence. That afternoon, Toby found his locker stuffed with banana peels, the stench sharp. Connor wasn't there, but Dara's snicker from the hall was enough. Toby photographed it, his hand shaking, then cleaned it in silence, Miss Kelly passing without a word. Aisha waited outside, her voice urgent. "I got the tackle," she said, showing the video. Connor's elbow clear, his grin damning. "What now?" Toby's jaw ached, but his resolve hardened. "We keep collecting, something's gotta give." Aisha's eyes flickered with doubt. "Or it gets worse." At home, Toby hid the pain, but Funmi's gaze was relentless. She found his damp PE shirt, the monkey ink faint but visible. "Toby, who did this?" she demanded, her voice breaking. Seyoun stood, his taxi keys forgotten. "No more lies, son." Toby's chest caved, the notes, the peels, the slurs spilling out. "It's this kid, Connor," he said, his voice cracking. "He won't stop. I didn't want you to worry." Funmi's eyes welled, but her grip was fierce. "You're not alone, Toby. We'll fix this." Sun's face darkened. "Quietly. No school, no Garda. We handle it." On October 16th, Toby and Aisha shared their evidence in the library. Their phones a secret vault, notes, photos, the tackle video, Connor's slur. Rory texted, "Connor's bragging about finishing you. Tomorrow, after football." Toby's stomach churned, but Funmi's words, "We'll fix this," steadied him. Shun suggested confronting Connor's parents, but Funmi hesitated. "His dad's a Garda. We need more." Toby nodded, his plan forming. Catch Connor in the act, force him to stop, keep it between them. But as he walked home, Liam's bike trailed him, a warning in the rain. The shadows in the corridor were closing in, and Toby's quiet fight was running out of time. On October 17th, 2024, Toby Adebayo stood in the changing room at St. Brendan's Secondary School in Swords, Ireland, his heart pounding as he laced his football boots. The air was thick with sweat and tension, Connor Walsh's smirk a warning across the benches. At 15, Toby, a Nigerian Irish student, was a target. Notes saying, "Go back to Nigeria and you don't belong," a locker scratched with jungle, a shirt scrawled with monkey, and a bruised jaw from Connor's tackle. His phone held proof, photos, a video of Connor's elbow, a recording of Blackie, but using it was a gamble. Connor's dad, a Garda, loomed over St. Brendan's, and teachers like Mr. Doyle and Miss Kelly ignored the slurs. Rory's warning yesterday, "Connor's planning to finish you after football," hung heavy, but Toby was ready, his silence now a strategy. Aisha, his Pakistani-Irish ally, had texted that morning. "Got more? Mia's phone has pics of Connor's notes. Be ready." Mia, Connor's girlfriend, had bragged about the bullying, and Aisha had persuaded her to share evidence, sensing her guilt. Rory, Toby's drifted friend turned informant, promised to watch Connor's crew, Liam and Dara, during the lesson. At home, Funmi and Seun had broken Toby's silence, finding his torn shirt and forcing the truth. Connor's racist campaign. "We'll handle it," Seun had said, his voice steel, but Funmi's eyes held fear. "No Garda, no school. We protect you quietly." Toby agreed, his evidence their weapon, but Connor's threat was a ticking clock. On the field, Connor's passes were vicious, one grazing Toby's ear. Coach Doyle's play-on was a shrug, and Toby gritted his teeth, dodging Liam's shove. Aisha on the sidelines filmed discreetly, her nod a signal. She had it. After practice, Toby lingered in the changing room, his phone recording in his bag, hoping to catch Connor's move. The room emptied, but Connor, Liam, and Dara stayed, their voices low. "Now, lads," Connor said, stepping close. "Time to sort you, jungle boy!" Liam grabbed Toby's arm, Dara blocking the door. Toby's pulse raced, but he stayed calm. "What's this, Connor? Scared to fight fair?" Connor's smirk faltered, his fist raised, but Rory burst in, his voice loud. "Back off, Connor, I'm telling." The distraction broke their grip, and Toby twisted free, grabbing his bag. Connor lunged, but Aisha's voice cut through from the hall. "I've got it all." Her phone, held high, had recorded the standoff. Connor's jungle boy, clear. Liam froze, Dara bolted, and Connor's face paled. "You're done," he spat, but his voice shook. Toby stood tall, his jaw throbbing. "No, you are." That evening, Toby, Aisha, and Rory met at Toby's house on Bracken Road, their evidence a shared vault. Aisha's video, Toby's photos, Mia's screenshots, Rory's testimony. Funmi and Seun watched the footage, Funmi's hands trembling, Seun's eyes hard. "We go to the head teacher," Seun said. "No Garda, his dad's too connected. But this ends." Funmi nodded, her voice fierce. "They won't ignore us now." Toby hesitated, fear gnawing. Connor's dad could twist it, but Aisha's grip on his arm steadied him. "We've got enough," she said. "He can't lie." On October 18th, Funmi and Seun met Miss Brennan, the head teacher, in her office, Toby and Aisha beside them. The room smelled of coffee and old books, a respect poster mocking them. Funmi laid out the evidence, videos, photos, notes, her voice steady despite her shaking hands. "This is racism," she said. "Your school let it happen." Miss Brennan's face tightened, but the footage was undeniable. Connor's slurs, his elbow, his threat. "This is serious," she said, her tone clipped. "Connor will be suspended pending review. We'll address Liam and Dara." Seun leaned forward. "And the teachers, they ignored it." Miss Brennan nodded, promising training, but her eyes said she wanted it buried. Back home, Toby felt lighter, but not free. Connor's suspension came the next day, October 19th, announced quietly to avoid disruption. Liam and Dara got detentions, their glares in the corridor a lingering threat. Mia, guilt-ridden, avoided Toby, but her evidence had tipped the scale. Rory sat with Toby at lunch, his anime talk a fragile bridge rebuilt. Aisha, her own folder still hidden, smiled. "We did it," she said, but her eyes were wary. St. Brendan's wasn't safe, not yet. On October 20th, Toby found a note in his locker. "Sorry." It was Connor's handwriting, shaky and small, like a child's. Toby stared, unsure if it was real or a trap. He showed Funmi, who clutched it, tears falling. "You're strong, Toby," she said, hugging him. Seun, home early, nodded. "You fought like us." Sade, drawing nearby, added a football to her sketch labeled Toby's team. Toby taped it to his wall, a small anchor. The bruise on his jaw was fading, but the note's scars, "You don't belong," lingered. He'd kept playing, kept learning, kept fighting, quietly. That night, Toby stood in his backyard, the Dublin stars faint through the clouds. Football practice was better. Coach Doyle's toughen up softer, Connor's absence a relief. St. Brendan's wasn't his, not fully, but it was his field, his classroom, his home. He thought of Aisha's courage, Rory's return, his parents' love. They'd faced the shadows and won a piece of light. Toby whispered to the night, "This is my story. Share it, hold it tight, make it yours." He imagined others, kids like him, silent but fierce, finding power in his fight, passing it on like a flame that never dies. On October 17th, 2024, Toby Adebayo stood in the shadowed corridor of St. Brendan's Secondary School in Swords, Ireland, his breath shallow as he gripped his phone, hidden in his pocket, recording. The air was heavy with the threat of Connor Walsh's lesson, promised after football practice. At 15, Toby, a Nigerian Irish student, was a marked target, notes scrawled with "Go back to Nigeria" and "You don't belong," a locker defaced with jungle, a shirt marked monkey, and a bruised jaw from Connor's deliberate elbow. His secret folder, photos of the vandalism, Aisha's video of the tackle, a recording of Connor's Blackie slur, was a fragile shield, but using it risked everything. Connor's dad, Agartha, gave his crew, Liam, Dara, and Mia, untouchable status, and teachers like Mr. Doyle and Miss Kelly looked away. Toby's allies were few but fierce. Aisha, his Pakistani-Irish classmate, had secured screenshots from Mia's phone, showing Connor planning the notes. Rory, Toby's drifted friend turned loyal, had warned him, "Connor's hitting you today after practice. They're setting you up." At home, Funmi and Seun had pierced Toby's silence, finding his defaced shirt and demanding the truth. "No Garda, no fuss," Funmi had said, her nurse's eyes blazing. "We fight for you, Toby," quietly. Seun, his taxi driver's hand steady, added, "Show us everything." Toby had shared the evidence, their plan forming: confront the school with proof, force Connor's hand, keep it private. But as Toby walked to practice, Liam's stare in the hall said time was up. On the field, Connor's aggression was a storm, his tackles wild, one catching Toby's ankle, twisting it. Coach Doyle's "shake it off, Adebayo" was a dismissal, but Aisha, watching from the bleachers, filmed, her phone subtle. Toby limped through, his resolve iron. He'd face Connor's trap and turn it against him. After practice, in the changing room, Connor cornered him, Liam and Dara blocking the exit. "You're done, Jungle Boy," Connor hissed, his fist cocked. Liam's phone was out, filming, Dara's smirk, a dare. Toby's voice was steady, his own recording rolling. "Say it again, Connor. Let's hear it." Connor faltered, then swung, his fist grazing Toby's cheek as Toby ducked. Rory burst through, shouting, "Stop it, Connor! I saw everything!" Aisha appeared, her video capturing Connor's lunge, his slur, "fucking abo," clear. Liam dropped his phone. Dara froze. And Connor's eyes widened, realizing the trap. "You're screwed," Toby said, his voice low, ankle throbbing. Miss Kelly, alerted by Rory, stormed in, her face pale. "Enough, all of you, to the head teacher, now!" Connor's smirk was gone, his crew scattering, but Toby stood tall, his evidence ablade. That evening, Toby, Aisha, and Rory sat with Funmi and Seun at their Bracken Road kitchen table, the evidence laid out, videos, photos, screenshots, notes. Funmi's hands shook as she watched Connor's attack, Seun's jaw tight. "This is our son," Seun said, his voice a vow. "We end it tonight." They agreed. No police. Connor's dad's influence was too strong. But a direct meeting with Miss Brennan, the head teacher, armed with proof. Toby's heart raced, fear mixing with hope. "What if they twist it?" he asked. Funmi's grip was fierce. "They won't. We're enough." On October 18th, the Adebayos and Aisha met Miss Brennan in her office, a stark room with a diversity poster that felt like a lie. Funmi presented the folder, her voice unwavering. "Connor Walsh has bullied my son for months. Slurs, vandalism, violence. Your staff ignored it. Fix this, or we escalate." Seun played the video, Connor's abo echoing the tackle brutal. Aisha added Mia's screenshots, her own evidence of slurs against her. Miss Brennan's face was ashen, her hands clasped. "This is unacceptable," she said, her voice tight. "Connor will be expelled, Liam and Dara suspended. We'll retrain staff, starting with Mr. Doyle." Toby exhaled, the weight lifting, but Miss Brennan's eyes begged silence. "Keep this internal, please, for the school." Back home, Toby felt the shift. On October 19th, Connor's expulsion was quiet, announced as a transfer to avoid ripples. Liam and Dara slunk through classes, their power gone. Mia, shamefaced, avoided Aisha, but her betrayal had cracked Connor's reign. Rory stuck by Toby, their anime chats reborn, and Aisha joined them at lunch, her smile a rare light. St. Brendan's wasn't safe. Whispers lingered. Teachers watched Toby closer, but it was his again, a piece reclaimed. On October 20th, Toby found a note in his bag, slipped there anonymously. "I'm sorry. It wasn't Connor's writing, maybe Mia's, maybe Liam's, a ghost of regret." He showed Funmi, who held it, her eyes soft. "You're my warrior, Toby," she said, hugging him. Seun, home with Sade, nodded. "You fought smart, lad." Sade, sketching, drew Toby in a football kit, a star above his head. "For you," she said, and Toby pinned it above his desk, a beacon. The note's scars, "You don't belong," faded against his family's love, his allies' courage, his own quiet power. That night, Toby stood on his balcony, the Dublin sky a canvas of clouds and stars. Football was his again, the field free of Connor's shadow. School was a battle won, not a war, but Toby was ready for more. He thought of Aisha's proof, Rory's stand, Funmi's fire, Seun's vow, Sade's star. They'd fought in the dark, no crowds, no noise, and carved a place to stand. Toby whispered to the stars, "This is our fight, our light. Carry it, share it, make it yours." He saw others, kids like him, silent but unbroken, holding his story, passing it like a torch to light their own corridors, a flame for every shadow.